everybody to the March 25th Steele County Board of Commissioners meeting. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I got one change on the agenda, and that is to approve the agenda with a reduction of $25.71 in the payment of the bills. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Well, but the addition to.
Oh, and the addition of number 20, the MnPrairie resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept approve the agenda as printed with the 2 corrections, or 1 addition and 1 correction.
Second. Motion's been made, seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That will take us to public comment. Those wishing to speak may state their name and address for the record. After they are acknowledged by the board chair, each person will be limited to 2 minutes to make his or her remarks. Speakers will address all comments to the board as a whole and not one individual commissioner. The board may not take action on an item presented during the public comment period unless the item is already on the agenda for action. When appropriate, the board may refer inquiries and items brought up during the public comment period to the county administrator for follow-up. So with that, I would, any public comment? Please go up to the podium and state your name for the record.
Hi everyone, my name is Max Forrester. I am a labor representative with AFSCME, and I represent Local 1665 MnPrairie employee workers. I was just here for the recent work session that we just had. We were discussing the potential termination or withdrawal from MnPrairie. And I guess I want to thank all of the commissioners for addressing the elephant in the room, or I guess there are a couple elephants. One would be the continuity of client care, and the other major one would be continued employment for the people who currently work for you. And I guess a withdrawal or dissolution from MnPrairie would have an impact on both of these things. I think we appreciate that the board is cognizant of both, but when we heard the work session and all the conversation that went there, we didn't actually hear what the plans would be for that, for the consequences. Like what would actually happen if, if the alliance did dissolve, what would happen for current membership? What would the plan be for continued client care other than finding someone who knows how a new entity could potentially be developed? And I guess our concern is that if a detailed plan to deal with the consequences did not accompany the resolution that you're going to be voting on, we're concerned that voting yes, no on a resolution that would create so much uncertainty without a detailed analysis of the costs, both financial and personal, could be dangerously premature for your employees and for the citizenry of all 3 counties.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment there. Anyone else?
Melissa Zimmerman, 2525 Stony Creek Drive. Some time ago I spoke about the critical role that both the East Side Corridor and MnPrairie played in our lives and how they impact each other. Fast forward to today, and since that discussion, we have been without essential services for approaching a year and have experienced even more disruptions to vital services. This has led to significant setbacks and has forced me as a parent and a caregiver into impossible decisions that no parent should ever have to make just to keep their family safe. Now more services than ever are being recommended to my family, yet we still lack the essential services we previously had due to staffing shortages. I heard in the work session that there is consideration for reverting back to how things were 10 years ago. However, the community-based services and the mental health care field looks very different than it did a decade ago. We cannot afford to move backwards. The attorney mentioned in the work session that we are going to shoot from the hip, but I can tell you that approach will not work. There must be a solid, well-thought-out plan in place before moving forward. Decisions made without careful planning and consideration risk causing even more harm to families like mine, who are already struggling with service gaps. These services are not luxuries. They are necessities that enable children and families to function, grow, and succeed. I understand that the difficult decisions you have to make, and my biggest concern to you is ensuring that services remain intact with no disruptions. We cannot continue losing essential support that we may never get back, as it only sets us farther back. I am just one person, one family, but there are many families like mine in Steele County who rely on these services to help our children grow into successful members of Steele County and beyond. We are already struggling to access the care we need, and further disruptions, reductions, or funding losses will only worsen the existing challenges, limiting the future success of the next generation. As you make this decision, I urge you to prioritize stability and continuity in service. Thoughtful, strategic planning is necessary to prevent further setbacks, because when families lose access to critical services, the entire community is impacted. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? If not, public comment closed. That will take us to correspondence. In your packet, we have a letter from Northland Public Finance for the City of Owatonna Tax Increment Finance District number 3-18. We'll look at that. And that will take us to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Abby, seconded by Glenn to approve the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That will take us to number 17 of our general agenda on page 145 of the packet. To approve the request for proposal related to the disbursement of the Steele County Local Homeless Prevention Aid Fund. Who is taking that?
I'll be presenting. So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is a topic that you've been discussing in work sessions now for probably about the last 6 months or so. We broke apart the homeless aid from the affordable housing aid because they are two separate funding mechanisms. And before you this evening is a resolution. No, actually, is it a resolution? Sorry, I couldn't remember the time. Either way, okay, then we're asking for approval from the board to adopt the request for proposal document. This is the one that was presented to you at your work session on March 11th. You'll see that this one has a slightly faster timetable than the affordable housing, in that we would finalize that RFP, remove the watermark and so on, and then begin soliciting proposals from area agencies that provide that homeless support with the wraparound services. And you'll see that this would then come back to the board in another roughly 6 to 8 weeks for a decision to award funds for the balance of calendar year 25. And then we would work through a separate process in early 2026 for the aid that was received in 2025. So unless there's any further questions, the RFP as presented in your packet is what we're asking the board to approve and authorize going forward.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I would move the approval of the RFP for the local homeless prevention aid fund.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded for the RFP process for the homeless prevention aid funds for Steele County here. Any discussion on that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That will take us to number 18. Approve the request for proposal related to the disbursement of the Steele County statewide affordable housing aid funds. 154.
So again, Mr. Chair, members of the board, before you is the request for proposals document that was presented to you at your March 11th work session. We're asking the board to approve it. The timetable for this is going to be a little bit longer in duration than for the homeless money. We will be soliciting ideas and specific proposals from the 4 cities in Steele County. We're offering some latitude in terms of how they might structure their proposal, but the idea would be that they would have until fall to get those proposals to the board, and that the board would make its funding decision before the end of this year, with the idea being that disbursement would be planned for January of 26, and then they would have 2 full calendar years to wrap up their project. And as I've mentioned to the board in the past, I've been reaching out to the city administrators And it was clear that a one-size-fits-all approach really wasn't going to work because each community had different ideas in terms of how they might address affordability within their community. So I'm hopeful that the RFP process would allow them the latitude they need to design a project that meets their needs, but would also meet with the board's approval. So unless there's any other questions, again, we're asking the board to approve the RFP that's in your packet.
Board's wishes.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion, we approve the request for proposal brochure related to the disbursement of Steele County statewide affordable housing aid funds, approve the scoring matrix, and authorize the staff to administer the plan contained in the approved RFP.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions or discussions on that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I can just add, Mr. Chair, thanks to Ethan's help for putting those together.
Number 19, approve amendments to the Steele County Local Housing Trust Fund Ordinance, number 40, on page 164.
So then, Mr. Chair, members of the board, back in June of 2023, the Steele County Board approved and adopted ordinance number 40, establishing a housing trust fund. The anticipation, I think, was that you were under some stringent timelines to administer the affordable housing money. We've since learned that it wasn't as hot of a potato as perhaps you might have been led to believe, and you had certainly ample time to pursue the RFP process that you've approved here this evening. Ordinance number 40 contemplated the formation of a housing trust fund. It delegated the administration of that fund to MnPrairie. It set in stone a certain number of requirements that even as an administration and talking with Tara and members of her team maybe weren't appropriate in all cases. And so, while I think it had merit, it maybe wasn't fully thought out in terms of what board's goals and policies might be. In doing a little research, there are some funding programs that will only pay to a housing trust fund. And so I felt that it might be prudent for the board to leave the bones of a housing trust fund in place, meaning keep ordinance 40 on the books, but with some changes, bringing administration and management of that housing trust fund back to the board, using some discretionary language that you can reactivate the housing trust fund if needed, that you can designate its membership at that time, that you can determine the reporting requirements that might be appropriate. So if the board agrees that having the bones of a housing trust fund, albeit an inactive body for the foreseeable future, then I'm recommending that you would approve the amendments to ordinance number 40 as presented in your packet.
Thank you. Any questions for Renee on that?
I just think it makes perfect sense to keep it intact, because we don't know about these grants into the future, how far they're gonna go, where, when they're gonna stop, if they're gonna keep going. So to keep it intact, I think makes a lot of sense rather than starting it all over. With that, I will move the approval of this document.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the amendments to the Steele County Local Housing Trust Fund Ordinance number 40. Any questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That'll take us to number 20, from the county work session. We got the MnPrairie resolution that we had, that was drawn up. Renee, would you care to read that, please?
And for those following along, it was in the board's work packet or work session packet. Steele County Resolution, terminate Minnesota Prairie County Alliance Joint Powers Agreement. If approved, this would be Resolution 25-017. Whereas the Steele County Board of Commissioners entered into a joint powers agreement to create Minnesota Prairie County Alliance on May 19, 2014, hereinafter referred to as JPA. Whereas the JPA created a joint powers board, hereinafter referred to as JPB, the JPB was delegated the Steele County's powers to administer essential human services programs and services mandated by federal or state law. Whereas the termination clauses contained in section 15.2 of the JPA states, quote, this agreement continues in force until 2/3 of the boards of commissioners of the member counties that have not given a notice to withdraw adopt resolutions to terminate this agreement, end quote. And whereas the Steele County Board of Commissioners has not given notice to withdraw, now therefore be it resolved, the Steele County Board of Commissioners vote to terminate the MnPrairie County Alliance Agreement with immediate effect. Be it further resolved, the Joint Powers Board remains active until December 31, 2026, or until an earlier time to conduct the winding down of joint JPB affairs and conduct an orderly transition to county operations. Be it further resolved, it is the intention of the Steele County Board of Commissioners to allow the Joint Powers Board as needed authority to conduct essential human services operations until such time as operations can be transitioned to the county. Steele County retains exclusive authority and control over required human services. Be it further resolved, the Steele County Board of Commissioners directs the county administrator to take all actions necessary to reestablish the Steele County Department of Human Services. This resolution shall become effective upon passage and without further publication.
Thank you, Renee. We had this at the work session today, went over this with length, so I would ask for board's wishes on this.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would also direct the board's attention to the memo that was contained within your work session packet, that along with adopting this resolution, the county attorney and I have indicated some other recommendations that we would ask that the board consider in adopting the resolution. But those recommendations, in addition to adopting the resolution, would be to recommend to the Joint Powers Board that they issue a public statement regarding the mutual decision to dissolve MnPrairie County Alliance, recommend to the Joint Powers Board that they establish a wind-down transition team, seek proposals from accounting firms to conduct a forensic audit of MnPrairie County Alliance, retain an external consultant to oversee operations, including financial, during the wind-down, and to take such actions as may be necessary to protect the interests of the three counties during the wind-down period. To, in addition, create the Steele County Department of Human Services, and lastly, to direct the county administrator and county attorney to oversee the orderly transition of human services to county operations, including but not limited to recommending consulting services as may be necessary to structure the new Human Services Department, coordinating with Waseca and Dodge County staff on transition matters, and developing a hiring plan so as to retain current MnPrairie staff as may be reasonable and necessary to establish and operate Steele County's new Human Services Department.
Thank you. Board's wishes or discussion?
Mr. Chair, I will move the resolution with the addition that Renee put on the end of it.
How would you state that with the memo?
The recommendations on the back here?
I think it could be approving the resolution as presented along with adopting the recommendations as set forth in your work session request for board action.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the resolution to terminate Minnesota Prairie County Alliance Joint Powers Agreement and adopt the recommendations on the back in writing here in print. Mr. Abbey.
Just for clarity, can somebody restate the motion again? I didn't get it. So we're approving the resolution number 25-017, authorizing the board chair to sign and with the recommendations as noted. Is that
The recommendations.
As stated.
as stated?
As stated in your work session agenda.
And that's this on the back?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, I will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Resolution passes. That would take us to number 21, adopt resolution eliminating redundant storage of paper copies of board agenda packets, minutes, mini agendas, minutes, resolutions, ordinance, and other similar board documents.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I brought some visual aids if anybody is at all interested. But Steele County has been retaining its minutes and agendas in paper form since the late 1800s. And what's interesting is if you looked at the minute books that I brought with me this evening, the minute books as they were presented in the 1800s versus the way they are today, are basically essentially the same. The only difference being now they're typed instead of written, and now they're on 8.5 by 11 paper instead of 11 by 17. But what's happened is in the last 40 or 50 years, the county has also moved to more of an electronic storage media for the documents that we need to keep forever. And I discovered not too long ago that the board creates an electronic packet that it puts on the web page, and then it generates a paper packet that gets then sent over to property tax and election, that's then rescanned and then stored on basically a shared drive of sorts called, well, it's an app called App Extender. And then the hard copy is stored in one place, and then the minutes get approved by the board, and then they get reformatted so they can get printed in the book, and then they get saved on the web, they get stored in App Extender, a synopsis gets then prepared and printed in the newspaper. And I said, so you're telling me that everything's being created 3 and 4 ways, and I have multiple people touching every document? And I was told yes. And so we're looking to try to retain the documents as we're required by law, but with far greater efficiency, because if you want to review the minutes of MnPrairie, and one of our residents can attest to this, there's no index, there's no way to store this efficiently. You have to literally read through the minutes of every single meeting. So our hope is to move forward with adopting App Extender or some replacement, some electronic storage measure for our perpetual and, more importantly, our permanent archive for resolutions, ordinances, minutes, agenda packets, and so on, that the board approve the web page as our tool for communicating those approved minutes and those agenda packets, and that we eliminate this redundant keeping of paper. We would obviously preserve these books forever because that's what we're required to do, but we would no longer update them. And my hope is by moving things to the web and keeping them a little bit longer, that might make them more accessible by the public. And I think my hope is in time, it might take a few years, I would love to get to a cloud-based storage mechanism so that it wouldn't be helpful for the old minutes, but at least all new minutes going forward, that they would be searchable, that they would be available to the public at any time, on their terms, at their convenience. I know that these books are really, I mean, it's actually quite interesting. Chair Brady and I discovered that his great-grandfather was on the board back in 1898. There was a J. Brady that showed up as being a commissioner in attendance on several meetings. So I mean, it's wonderful history, but not the best. So I brought this forward to the Land Use and Records Committee to see if there would be support from at least 2 of the board members, and they felt that moving to this electronic storage means, because we're already doing it, and eliminating the redundancy creates some efficiency within government. And again, my goal would be to move to more of a cloud-based process at some point in the future when we can maybe get different tools or resources available to us.
So hopefully the public will be able to access them and see things better, and you have some idea, it might be saving them a little time too?
I'm hoping so, because right now I've got 2 people creating everything and then recreating it in a different format, and we scan it on the computer, we create a PDF using the computer, but we use another scanner to drop it into another tool. So yes, I'm really, really hoping to save some time here.
Okay.
The resolution, Rebecca, did not have a number for this particular action. Do you have
2025-018.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm asking for you to adopt Steele County Resolution 2025-018, a resolution regarding the official agendas, minutes, and records of the county.
Okay, thank you. Board's wishes on that?
Sure, I'll offer the resolution.
Resolution's been offered, do I hear a second?
Second.
Resolution's been offered and seconded for the Land Use and Records Committee for improving the storage process, eliminate redundant storage of paper copies and board agenda packets. Any discussion?
So what year did you say it was his great-grandpa? I'm just trying to do the math here.
1898.
I'm trying to figure out how. 18 what?
1898.
That's his great-grandpa?
Great.
Or is it
2
great?
grades.
That's number 1, I'm number 4.
Okay, all right.
That was,
So that makes a little more sense.
That was worse
Great,
than-
that'd be great then, I think,
yeah,
yes.
great, that was worse than budget.
All right.
Okay, so, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, informational items. Land Use and Records Committee minutes are in your packet on page 173. Public Safety and Health Committee minutes on page 174. Next meeting, commissioner reports. Rob, you got anything? Mr. Krieger.
On the 13th of March, we had a closed session that I attended. On the 14th, I had an Emergency Communications Board meeting, one of many this month. On the 18th, we had Public Safety, and we had MnPrairie Finance and Joint Powers. On the 19th, we had a Smart Bus meeting. On the 20th, I had another Emergency Communications Board and RAC meeting. That was in Rochester. On the 24th, we had the County and Township meeting and a presentation for the grant money that South Country Health Alliance gave to Let's Smile. That's the dental service that goes into all the schools and takes care of kids that are on Medicaid and that sort of stuff. What a program she's got going. She's in all the schools in the Owatonna district, all the schools in the Waseca district, Blooming Prairie, Bedford, Ellendale, and now she's moving into Rice County. I don't know how she keeps it going, but it's amazing.
Commissioner Abbey.
I'll catch you next time. Yeah, you got my point.
Anything else to add, Renee?
Just real quick, some of the board members are aware that I've been participating in the Southeast Minnesota Together meetings. This was an organization that was discussed at your AMC district meeting last fall, and they are working on a regional transportation plan, a regional housing plan, and still considering and exploring the idea of a regional economic development organization. So right now, there's just a lot of exploring and planning and talking going on right now. But I also found out that one of the participants is a professor with the Winona State University, and they have a civics or government affairs division. They call it the Civic Center. And she had indicated that she has some students that might be interested in doing internships with the county. So I will be meeting with her in a couple weeks, and we'll see if maybe we can introduce some college students to government service and maybe have them work on some projects for us.
Thank you.
Is that the group that talked, or they were talking about at our district meeting?
Yes.
Same organization.
Commissioner Brockbeck.
March 13th, I had a meeting at the Southeast Minnesota Emergency Medical Services. Also on March 13th, I attended a meeting for the Workforce Development Joint Powers Board. Also on March 13th was the special closed session board meeting. March 17th was Steele and Waseca Drug Court. March 18th was Public Safety Committee, and March 24th was Bureau.
Thank you. Commissioner Glenn.
I attended the Land Use and Records Committee meeting, the meeting at the History Center, and the township meeting yesterday.
Yep. And I had only had two meetings. I had the Spiro meeting yesterday, and I was in a closed session on the 13th. With that, our next meeting notices are Internal Central Services will be Tuesday, April 1st, 8 o'clock in the boardroom. Property and Maintenance Committee, Thursday, April 3rd, 8 o'clock in the boardroom. Public Works Committee, Tuesday, April 8th, 8 o'clock in the Public Works Facility. County Board Work Session next April 8th, on Tuesday at 4 p.m. in the boardroom here. And the next meeting is April 8th at 5 o'clock in the boardroom. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made, second to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.